Andrea, how do you pronounce this?
You're trying to teach me French earlier.
She didn't believe that I was saying it properly.
He wasn't.
I was.
You weren't.
I was.
You're making it up.
So, one of the biggest and most important components of what we do is our butter, the butter we use. And this is a process we do every day before we laminate. Is even though our butter comes in sheets like this, in 1 kilo size, we don't just throw the sheets like this into our books. We have to kind of shape them into the size that we want. And we actually combine 2 sheets to make it into one bigger one so that the books can be a little larger. And that helps us save on time a little bit, but also just, maximize our workflow. But this butter that we use, an important component, a major component to our product because of the flavor, number one, but number two, how malleable it is. When we're making croissants, we are typically stretching and flattening out the dough over a series of laminations and layers. And this process, this butter allows it to not break. So it's very, very smooth, very almost like, which I'll show you in a second. It's very elastic. And the butter, when it breaks, you kind of have like a bready, crummy croissant. But when it's nice and layered and you have no breakage, you have those nice kind of honeycomb patterns in the center, very flaky. It has that chewy texture that we all know and love in a croissant. But in particular, the butter that we work with, the company we work with is Iceni, Saint Mare. And we actually, a funny story about butter is we actually took a detour. We started with this butter when our croissants first kind of took off, even before. But what happened is we were looking to just, not that we weren't happy with it, but we were looking at what else was out there. And we ended up experimenting with a handful of different French brands, French butters, really high quality like this one. And the issue we were having is the butters, because they were higher in butter fat, they were about 84% butter fat. We were experiencing a lot of breakage because the butter was drier. And even though the quality was very good, it didn't really serve its purpose like we wanted. And so we went back to this butter for that reason. But one of the good things out of that experience was, instead of using just a single sheet, we were able to learn from these bigger sheets that we were working with, and we now combine the sheets. So now, instead of just 1 kilo, we're working with 2 kilo butter sheets, and that just allows our production to be smoother, faster. But this is the process of how we do it. So first we'll flatten out these wrappers, and I like to do 4 at a time just to save on time. So we do 4 at a time like this, and then we... Good morning, Anna. Start the sheeting process. So we want to sheet these down because if we just combine them together as they are, it's not going to make it through our sheeter. And so this just allows us to, have just a little more room. And sheeting down the butter also plasticizes the butter a little more, so it's kind of it makes it a little more elastic. And we like doing this. We like doing this every day before, and not just doing a bunch and having them on reserve, is because as we do this, the butter kind of gets to the temperature that we want. And so we can just jump straight into lamination. So now that we flattened them out a little, these are ready to be combined, but we got to do these first. Here. Before. And when we're sheeting these down, we want to go gradually down, because you can imagine like a cold block of butter, if you just take it from this to this, it's just not going to go through, number one, but it's going to warp the butter from being like a straight block into being some type of ugly oval, which we don't want. So you can see how they're flatter, comparatively a lot flatter. And then now, got a few more. And the thing we love about this butter, apart from how amazing it is to work with, what we love about it is the flavor. There's this like nutty, really nice flavor in our croissants when we're finished. And to say we experimented with a lot of butters is an understatement. Like we've experimented with like over a dozen butter brands, and out of all of them, this one just constantly not just performed the best, but the finished croissant, when we would taste them blindly, tasted so much better. And so for us, the only down point was, see, like in this case, that's an example of butter getting stuck, but it's good. But the only down point is that they only come in 1 kilo sheets, but we found a little hack. Takes a little time, but you know, better do it than not. And with butter, you know, people always say, you know, you want to use a European style butter for croissants that's at least 82% fat. What all that means is, you know, typically in Europe, the standard of butter fat in butter is 82%. So when you're churning cream, you have a lot of water in cream. And so as you churn it and you make butter, and butter starts to form, all the fat solids start to come together, you still have liquid in there. And the higher the butter fat, the less water, meaning the better quality. And so from a production perspective, you know, when you do have more butter and less water in your croissant, it's going to taste better. Typically, American brands will have 80% butter, which is why they say European style is a little bit more high quality, but you know, 82 is the percentage we've kind of come to liking. All right, now this step. So what we want to do here is we're basically starting to open up the butter. You can see it has a nice kind of golden color. And the color of the butter usually represents what the cows are eating. So typically a more yellow color will indicate more keratin. You know, the cows are eating more grass. And therefore, you know, you have a happier animal, happier cow, typically you have a better product. So we want to stack these two like this, one on top of the other, so that they're, one, as you can see, they're not joined yet, but one of the components of, when we talk about the quality of this product is the elasticity. So when you bend it, it doesn't break. It has like almost like a rubbery kind of appearance. It's not rubbery. It's just, how the butter is processed and, designed specifically for our application. So we're gonna do this. Today's a weekday. Today's Wednesday. So we're busy Wednesdays, but we're not busy as busy as we are on Saturdays or the weekends. So on the weekends, we'd have about 30 of these that we got to combine together. But weekdays, a little bit less, but still takes time. Also, a fun fact, even though we're always washing our hands in the food industry, and that could dry out our hands, the plus of working with butter is your hands are always moisturized. Nature's lubrication. Stacked up. And that's the process with not just the butter, but everything we do, we focus on details. And so, a part of what's garnered us success, apart from using high quality ingredients, is focusing on the details of how those ingredients are prepared. A perfect example is like, cookies. As she's scooping cookies right now, is you can have all the right ingredients to make a cookie, but if you don't combine those ingredients in the right way, you're not going to get a good cookie, And so that's our philosophy of, with sourcing the best ingredients, but really focusing on the details of how we prepare these ingredients. And this is a big one. When we first started with this company, we didn't do this. We just would do 1 kilo at a time, and we'd do smaller books, and it took a very long time. This has allowed us to, speed things up while maintaining the quality. Another cool thing is like, when we're using these foils that come with the butter, we used to, before using this brand, we used to have to get parchment paper, and like every time we made butter, we'd waste parchment paper, and it was just, environmentally it's a lot of waste, but also, a lot of extra cost. But with this, it's cool because we get to kind of reuse these plastics for stuff like this, or in the future. Let's make sure they're straight, nice and straight. Cool. So when we're working with this butter, we want to make sure that temperature is a big factor. So right now the butter is very cold. It's not frozen, but it's like very cold. And so we're kind of fighting time. So as the butter starts to warm up, it starts to melt. And therefore we're not, that's when, butter is melting, it's not going to be able to work properly in a croissant. And so we're kind of at a fight against time. At first, when we did this, we were so nervous because we were worried about it melting, but now kind of got this confidence with them. Cool. And last but definitely not least, Andrea, how do you pronounce this?
Bleh. You were trying to teach me French earlier.
She didn't believe that I was saying it properly.
He wasn't.
I was.
You weren't.
I was.
You were making it up. He's fluent French,
You know, I don't speak Spanish fluently, but I can read Spanish.
You
Really.
think you can?
I can.
You couldn't even say Jamaica.
First of all, I didn't know. No. I didn't know it was Spanish.
You go say guy.
That was my thing.
I'm sorry, her.
You know how she read this? She goes, insigni. I was like, how do you say, like, if you take out the I and the Y, how do you say that? She was like, sign. I was like, no, sign.
Oh, I think